that time of the week again. As you can tell, I'm eating a buttermint and it's just gone 6 o'clock. So it's time to do another fragrance drive along video. So, what could we talk about today? Well, it is still January when I filmed this, but I thought by the time it's uploaded it's February. And of course there's a special day in February, for couples anyway. Some people love this day, some people definitely don't like it. But it's Valentine's Day. Now, stereotypically, obviously for Valentine's Day, people tend to buy their partner, their spouse, their wife, whoever, chocolate and flowers. That tends to be the popular thing. But let's be honest, fragrances are also something that you can buy someone as a gift, as a nice thing to say you love someone. And I was trying to think today, what sort of brands, what fragrances maybe do they have in those brands as well? Do I think would be quite good as Valentine's Day gifts? If you're not sure, you've decided, you know what, I always do flowers and chocolate. Why don't I buy a fragrance this time? What brands could I potentially look at so I can get it ordered now and get it for Valentine's Day? So, I'm going to say 5 today. I'm not going to go into the specifics of the fragrances because I know I'll forget some at this time of the morning. But I'll give my reasons why, and maybe just recommend, even if they're not from the brands I mentioned today, just a couple of fragrances that you might want to potentially consider. But if we go into the first brand I'm going to talk about, I'm going to go Jean Paul Gaultier. I think when you're talking about fragrances as gifts, sometimes the presentation matters of the fragrance as much as the smell. And look, everyone knows Jean Paul Gaultier, don't they? They're a very well-known brand. Le Mal's an all-time classic of their fragrances, and they've done plenty in recent times, Scandal, that have also been really, really popular. So it's a very well-known brand. And the reason I've chosen this one as well is they also do a lot of women's fragrances as well. And I love the design of some of their ones. They've got one, I believe, called Divine. And it's obviously that Jean Paul Gaultier, torso design. But it's just very classy. It's got a gold colour. You got that one called Classique. And I just like the design of the bottles as much as everything. There's something that looks nice on the side of your counter, your beauty products. It just stands out there as well. And I think what's quite nice is because it's got that recognisable name, popular scent DNA, it's going to be something that they like to wear. They know you've spent a lot of money on them because it's a nice designer brand. And I think it just shows a bit more love and affection rather than like a nice, this is where I'd say clones, as much as I think clones are amazing, this is when you do want to actually buy the proper brand because it matters more. So I think that's what I'd probably say with Jean Paul Gaultier. Mass pleasing scents, recognisable brand, looks good, shows you care. And I can't really think, I think for me today that's probably number one. That's why I've mentioned it first as a really good brand to start with if you want to buy a Valentine's Day gift. Now, it's quite expensive, that one. The next one I'm going to say as well is a little bit expensive, but again I think it's worth that extra cost, and it's Prada. Again, Prada, I think in general, I think of Prada as a women's brand, and I don't necessarily think of Prada when I think of them straight away as fragrances. They've done some amazing fragrances though. The Prada Amber line for men is brilliant, but I look at the DNA of Prada for me and I almost get this luxury soap sort of vibe to them, and just high-end quality. Now in recent times they have started to release some fragrances that are a little bit more in line with the most popular brands, the Prada Ocean, Prada Carbon, bit of that blue fragrance line. So they're trying to tap into it. They're one of those brands that I think are modern but timeless as well. They definitely have that sophistication where they smell a little bit more grown up. And again, yes, you're paying top dollar, but it's a recognisable brand, Prada. It's soapy clean type smell, mass pleasing, probably a little bit less playful than maybe a Jean Paul Gaultier could be, but I think that works well, particularly for maybe an older man, older woman. I think those ones have that little bit more extra quality and refinement that some people will appreciate more, and I love Prada. It's a brand that I really, really must get some fragrances from them because I don't think I've ever had them. Well, no, I haven't. My brother's owned a few and I've worn them sneakily from him. But they've got some great fragrances. I've had a couple of little testers of them, let's say, little samples. but yeah, nothing too major. So I'd say they're the two brands. If you want to spend a little bit more, go for those ones, because they're very, very classy scents. Now, the next one, I'm kind of going to do a bit of a double one here, and this is more for women trying to buy for men here. And it's a brand that, again, people don't mention. I don't know how available it is across the world, but Molton Brown and L'Occitane. Now, L'Occitane I do think do men's and women's. I think Molton Brown do as well, but I feel like the brands, maybe it's just from where I've looked in the past, they do lean more masculine. But just first of all, speak about Molton Brown. Well, actually, let's mention them both together. L'Occitane and Molton Brown both do a lot of shower gels. And I think shower gels with them are probably almost more of a selling point than their fragrances. But L'Occitane have had a little bit of hype with some of their fragrances. One called Eau de Beau, which was a lovely cinnamon type scent that was kind of in line with the fragrances that you see today, those nice date night fragrances with a little bit more of a grown up edge. Molton Brown, again, I think does slightly older gentleman type scents, but they do some really nice summery ones. The one I had was called Dark Leather, and Dark Leather's very, very nice, but again, you've got to like leather scents, but it's a nice spicy leather, a little bit more wearable. And if you're looking at their fragrances, you're probably paying for their more eau de toilette rather than eau de parfum line, probably about 40 to 50 pounds, and then you go up to 60, 70. Now, for a brand that's not that recognisable in terms of compared to like your Pradas and stuff, maybe not got the same prestige about it, it's quite an investment, I appreciate. But what you'll have is that little bit more uniqueness, a little bit, you know, that you cannot fault the quality of them again. And I think that uniqueness about them as well will almost be a nice surprise for some people. Some people will go, oh, that's a nice surprise, that smells really nice. I've not really ever had a Molton Brown before. They may know the brand, but may have never owned it. So I know for me, if someone bought me a Molton Brown, as a gentleman, I'd very much appreciate it. And said they do bring a bit of grown-up, sophisticated edge about them, which I really appreciate. L'Occitane, again, exactly the same, but I do think they don't prioritise fragrances quite as much, but they have got a few out there that you go, ooh, that's really nice. So definitely a brand just to keep an eye on there as well, more just to have a bit of a glance and see what there is out there. Now, I could mention Lush. I think I've got to mention Lush, because I think, again, Lush is a brand that people haven't really tapped into, and I'm kind of doing this in opposite effect to maybe Molton Brown here. This is one where I think you'd buy more for women, and there's a fragrance. I'm going to actually go into a specific fragrance for this one more than the brand itself, because you've seen my reviews. If you haven't seen my Lush body spray reviews, check them out. I've done a couple of reviews of perfumes lately as well, so definitely, again, if you're interested in the perfume, have a look at those. There's some really good ones there. Lord of Misrule, I think, is a brilliant one. But the one I wanted to mention, if I was maybe buying for a woman, would probably be Snow Fairy. Now, Snow Fairy is a little bit juvenile, let's say, sweet, playful, not overly high quality, but it's been around a long time by Lush. They've kept this one, but it's definitely got that younger girl type vibe, so more for a younger person, this one. But I do like its sort of bubblegummy sweetness. I think it's just very nice, it's clean, it's pleasant. And what I like with that one as well, they do a line, this is probably the main thing that I like, is they do candles for this one. My brother's actually bought Snow Fairy candle. Now, he'd never buy it as a fragrance because it's just too feminine. But actually, as a candle, it smells amazing. So even if you think, do you know what, I'm not sure about this as a fragrance, I really like, you know, I like the product, get it for them as a candle. A candle's a lovely gift. You know, I really like candles. And this one smells probably better as a candle than it does as a fragrance, just in my personal opinion. But it's, again, you could get a whole gift set of that. You get shower gels for that, you get body sprays, so you've got a little bit more versatility with that scent as well. And again, I don't want to just discount the other ones. There's lots of really nice perfumes and smells within the Lush brand. My mum absolutely loves Blue Skies and Fluffy White Clouds. She's a huge patchouli fan, and yeah, I mean, if you want good patchouli, get Karma from their line as well. It's brilliant. And as I said, they do shower gels of a lot of these, perfumes and the body sprays, so really check those out. They are fantastic. I can't get enough of Lush. And then where would I I go for my last brand, if I was going for a 5th brand, it's tough. I'd probably go. I'm going to give 2 more. Because I can't separate these. And again, I haven't touched into these brands enough to give you a real full insight of specific fragrances. But I know that they've got some very good ones. First one's Bulgari. Bulgari Man in Black is an excellent fragrance. It's a very, very well known scent. I haven't seen it so much now on websites. I feel like it's a fragrance that's maybe a brand that doesn't, get the same recognition. Again, it's not really popular, but they did a nice Bulgari Aqua line, which was kind of like a marine. It was like in a round bottle. Very, very popular line as well. I believe they also had one called Wood Essence, which was in the same sort of bottle as Bulgari Man in Black. But Bulgari Man in Black is a lovely, spicy fragrance, warm, spicy, seductive type scent. Again, a modern James Bond type scent, with just lovely sweet notes, lovely spices, seductive. It's not strong, it's not super strong. I wish it was a little bit stronger. There used to be a fragrance called Gold Digger Spice, which was super cheap. I think I got it for about £3 or £4, and it smelled very similar to that, but she's not around anymore. But the other one I was going to say is Victor and Rolf. So they do Spice Bomb. They also do one called Flower Bomb for women, and I do like those ones as well. A little bit like Jean Paul Gaultier. I like the fact they have like these grenade bottles. Again, it just adds a little bit of a gimmick to the fragrance, which some people might say, oh, that cheapens it a little bit. But I think in the context of giving it as a gift, I think it just adds something along. Now, I wasn't a huge fan of the original Spice Bomb, if I'm being honest with you, and I wasn't overly blown over by Spice Bomb Extreme, which is probably their biggest selling point, a flanker of the original Spice Bomb. It's okay, but it lacks a bit of it lacks a little bit of uniqueness, which I think it could have had. I love spice if it's utilised right, and it's not that they utilise them wrong. I find spice to be very aggressive. Again, it's not my favourite, but if it's done right with those sort of Christmassy spices, I think of like tobacco vanille, it's got those nice spices in. I think it's brilliant, mate. It could be amazing. I think it could have gone more into that realm, but it just feels a little bit like, and it's probably not because of that fragrance specifically, but it almost just feels like every fragrance smells a little bit like that now, because that's what people want to smell like, that sort of caramel sweetness. But yeah, some great scents. And look, I think probably as a general rule of thumb, fragrances are a great gift whenever, not just for Valentine's Day. And I mean, personally, I don't know what anyone else thinks. I would love a fragrance as a gift. Some people might say, oh, are you telling your partner you smell? Or not for me. I think it's nice. I think, particularly from my experience, that I'm going as someone who likes keeping fit and stuff. And when I used to work in schools, obviously at term times, I used to be given lots of chocolate, lots of things. Now, obviously, Valentine's Day is different because you're probably only getting it from one person. But sometimes you don't always want chocolate, particularly if you're someone who's just started your New Year's resolutions, you're on a bit of a health kick, you've kept it going into the month of February, you may not really fancy that chocolate. You may be a bit bored of having flowers. And as I said, for someone who's maybe a buyer as well, you might actually just want to get something a little bit different. And I think it's just that little bit more thought as well, a little bit more care if you buy someone a fragrance. And these brands overall are pretty safe. I've not gone for like a Middle Eastern type scent that I go just try it. These are very safe scents. In general, I don't think any of the ones I've mentioned, if you get them in a relatively small bottle size anyway, you're going to have to pay over £100 for them. And I just think it's really nice. I said it's a little bit like you put a bit more thought into it. The amount of times I've been to, I remember a year ago I went to Tesco actually to buy some bits, just food wise. And I remember obviously supermarkets do this a lot, but when there's like an occasion coming up, they obviously put a lot of like the flowers and chocolate and the cards right at the front of the store. So when you walk in, I'll pick that up as I go along. Wine's another one. And yeah, obviously you see people just picking it up right at the last minute at like 10:30 the night before. So if you can get ahead of it, get a fragrance, buy it online, don't go into a shop unless you really want to spend a little bit more over the odds, and you can get someone a really nice gift that I think they're going to really appreciate. and you never know, maybe that would be the thing that makes them think, do you know what, this person, this individual I'm with is the one to keep. But yeah, check them out. I think if I'm just recommending websites to look at as well, I find the best website for this is All Beauty. They do some great deals on Active de Palma, which is a brand I could have mentioned today because they do a lot of unisex fragrances. The reason I didn't mention it is purely for the sole reason of I mentioned Active de Palma a lot, and I wanted to give a little bit more credit to some other brands and probably just expand some more on my knowledge, because I know I do repeat myself otherwise, and you want to hear about different fragrances, new fragrances, and we'll maybe on the next one we'll look at some new releases for 2026, or what we can maybe expect from brands in 2026. I think that'd be quite a nice video. But yeah, all arrived at work now. Hope you've enjoyed this one today, and yeah, I'll catch you later.